Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it.
Right, I got a little treat for you guys here. This is a game that has not been released yet on retail. This, I believe, is coming out at Essen later this year, called Maps of Misterra from Sit Down Games. Now, if you don't recognize the publisher, let me give you a quick little recap of a game that's on my shelf. Oh, here we go. And that is Tawanaku. Check out my review for this one. This is a game that I reviewed only a few months back, I think. And this is a really solid deduction game, kind of like Minesweeper on steroids. And, you know, this is one of the better games that Sit Down Games have put out, although they put out some really cool stuff. And, you know, at first, I thought that this was going to be a direct sequel to it, because the look and feel of it, at least from reading the rules and that, I thought, oh, is this basically the same sort of style as this? Well, I can wholeheartedly say that no, this is not similar to this. This is a deduction game, this is not. The main thing is that you have a communal map that everybody influences, and you have a meeple that you move around on said map that allows you to do different things. There's the similarities between the two. Don't let your love or hate for this influence your love or hate for this. So we're going to put this one away. So Maps of Misterra is basically a game where everybody is playing a cartographer. So this can be played with up to 4 players. Each player has their own parchment board, but there's also an island board in the center of the table where everybody gets to influence and plot out the map itself. The idea is that you have these sketch cards that you will obtain. So these sketch cards basically, you know, you're going to get vibes from things like Honshu and Hokkaido and stuff like that here. But basically, the sketch cards are different terrain types. So essentially jungle, plains, you know, water, lagoons and mountains. And they come in combinations of doubles on here. And the idea is that on your turn, you have a meeple, which, you know, they give you screen printed meeples, which is pretty sweet. The meeple will start on the beach on one side, and so what you'll do is that you'll move said meeple, you'll grab a sketch card out of a display that's face up, and then you have a choice of one or two things. You can either claim a region if it's already confirmed on the map and it hasn't been claimed by somebody else, and basically it's just the bigger the region, the more points you get. But the main thing that you'll do is that using your parchment board, which is basically a clone of this essentially, you'll take your sketch card and you'll place it on your board like so to cover 2 spaces, and you can overlap cards fine. What this does is from these tiles that you have here from the different terrains, they're hazy or confirmed depending on when they're mapped. So the cloudy hazy version is what happens first. So let's say I've got a forest and the plains here. I then, you know, let's say I'm over here and this is where I put it on here, next to D. So I then go onto this island board and in the same combination as I've got here, place the 2 tiles so that they're hazy side up. This is kind of like the cartographer saying, I reckon this is here, I'm mapping it out like this. I don't know if that's how the island is laid out, but we'll go with it. And the idea is that if you then play a sketch card later that, you know, that overlaps a space where there's already one of the same type, you flip it over to its confirmed side and that is stuck in place. Like, you cannot change that. But while it's hazy, other players can still come along and mess around with the map. And so, as you go through the game, the different terrain types have got different little rules with them. Like, I can see further if I'm on the mountain, I can move faster if I'm on the plains, I can't map the region if I'm in the jungle because I can't see Jack. You know, there's still little touches like that which are cool. But there's 2 main avenues that you're kind of going down. Firstly, you're trying to, well, one way you can go is you're trying to make your parchment board the same as the island. Because imagine that this is kind of like your sketchbook and, you know, this is the actual island. The more like squares you have on here that match what's on the board, the more points you score. But on top of that, everybody gets a bunch of premonition cards. And this isn't all of them, there's more in the box. But basically you get to choose 2 out of 4 of these at the start of the game. And they basically represent objectives. And they're patterns based on this board, not that board. It's basically like the sponsors that you've got for your little expedition. And the idea is that they score based on what's on here. So what you've done with the sketch cards. They don't care what's on the main board. So you might have something that says, well, if I've got columns of forest, I get bonus points. Or if I've got loads of mountain on my parchment board, I get bonus points. Doesn't matter if they're all on the island though. You know, you might think, well, you know what, I don't care if the island matches the parchment board. You know, my sponsor claims that there's a bunch of mountains on here and I'm not going to tick him off. So, fine, have your mountains all over this board. You know, see if I care. Give me the points. And so you can approach the game kind of an extreme of one of those two ways or a balance of the two, depending on which of those objectives you grab. And that's kind of like the gist of the game from a rules perspective, and certainly as you can tell, it's not like Tawanaku, it's not a deduction game. You're not trying to figure out what's on this island. There's no like pre-scenario of, oh, the map is exactly like this. The map is how the players build it. It's very interactive in that sense. So imagine that everybody's going around with a Meeple on this board, and so they're constantly like using their their sketch cards or whatever on their own board, and they're putting the tiles on here to sort of go, well, I reckon the mountain's here and the mountain's there, and somebody comes along and goes, well, that's rubbish. What? No. I mean, I confirm there's a mountain there, but there's actually a water there. Get your stupid mountain off there.
Are we being too literal?
Found anything yet? Nothing yet, sir!
And then more being covered and flipped, and it's basically manipulation of the tiles depending on what you're doing on your board. Now, you'll want to cover a lot of your parchment board because you'll get negative points if you don't, but it's up to you as to whether you're going to try and match this closely to the island or not. And this creates a little bit of fun little banter between the players as everybody's mocking each other for how, badly their parchment board looks nothing like the island in question. And it's like, well, what do I care? That's what my sponsor says, I'm not going to tick him off, that's where my points are coming. But other than that, it's a very simple, light game, pretty much like family weight, really. There's not a lot of rules in the game at all. I mean, where did I put the rule book? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, this rulebook here looks bigger than it actually is. You've got a very good play aid on the back of it, which should pretty much cater for anybody who returns to the game. You've then got a couple of pages devoted to the actual presumption card, so all of them explained. A couple of the backers just for the solo mode, more on that in a minute. But the actual game itself is literally just, 1 page of setup, 3 pages of rules including the end game. That's it. It's a very straightforward game and not difficult to understand at all. I didn't have any problems understanding the text in here. You've got pictorial examples. It's a nice, relatively straightforward game for 1 to 4 players. It takes about an hour, probably an hour and a quarter with 4 players to finish. It's not a long game at all. And certainly with less players, it will take less time. Now, my experience playing with this is that I do think it's best at free. I think free is a good sweet spot because in 2 players, you're kind of doing your own thing on different sections of the board and you don't bump into each other as much. But in a 4-player game, you also find that maybe it's a little bit too chaotic in that sense. Not terribly. Games that have this problem with the more players you have, the more chaos you have been worse. I think this is one of the better examples because I've enjoyed 4-player games of this because the island is big enough to cater for 4, but realise that the only player scaling that occurs is that at the start of the game you put some confirmed jungle tiles on the board, but it's like 1 extra tile per player and that's kind of it. I don't know if that's sufficient enough, but I didn't have a problem playing this with 4. I would happily play it with 4 again, and the turns are pretty quick. Everybody basically does the same 3 phases twice before the next player, but the phases are literally move a Meeple, grab a sketch card, and decide whether you want to claim a region or map something out. Rinse, repeat, next player. They really don't take that long to go through the turns unless somebody is APing like crazy, in which case get them out of this game. But it's not one that you should be APing about. But the game at 3 players goes at a very quick pace, and I think it's just the sweet spot, the pure balance of this game. Now, the gameplay itself is good fun. It's charming, it's light, it's not incredibly thinky because you're not trying to figure out anything like deduction-wise, and certainly other players can kind of mess you over, but you're basically looking at what sketch cards you've got available and what sponsor cards you've got and deciding, right, well, I mean, if I could put this card here, I could overlap that, that's fine. And you've got the added thing that obviously you can only look so far. You can only map on your parchment board where your Meeple can see. So there's no good being at the top corner over here and trying to map something down here because you can't see that far. But you try to use the terrain to your advantage, and it doesn't matter if it's confirmed or not. So, the mountain lets you see an extra space forward. Great, I could be on this mountain and map the other side of the map. Well, it's not confirmed. Who cares? I say it's a mountain, and therefore I get the mountain ability. It is just a cool little, like, a kind of an evolving state of the map, because the terrains will change based on people putting their sketch cards down. So 1 minute it's a mountain, the next minute it's a plains, the next minute some jerk turns it into a jungle and blocks your path. There's a, just light little touches of interaction there, but it's not someone directly trying to screw you over.
In bird culture, this is considered a dick move.
Now, there is a solo mode in the game, as I mentioned. It's a 2-page spread, but the solo mode is not really the reason you should pick this game up. I think the solo mode in Tawanako was a lot better. There was some randomness to it, but for the most part, you still had a puzzle to figure out. You still had to think, well, based on those, I got to figure out, oh, what's that? And that's good fun. Here, though, it's basically that you just simply flip over a couple of cards each turn for the automata, and what it does is basically it has mapped out 1 and 2 for squares on the board, and then it has 2 actions that it basically does. It will either confirm if there's something already there, or if there's nothing already there, it will simply just put that particular terrain tile out. And 3 of the cards let you claim regions, and it's just based on what the largest thing is at the time. But that's literally it. And what you're essentially doing is you're doing your own thing as in the multiplayer game, but you're almost trying to set the game up so that the opponent will confirm stuff for you. You know, occasionally, yes, they will muck up your terrain types or put something somewhere that you didn't want. But there have been a lot of times, particularly in my first game, where it's like, well, I need a lot of mountains. Well, if I get some hazy mountains over the board, eventually the AI player is going to come along and confirm it for me, so happy days. And so it's kind of a case of almost trying to goad this set of cards into helping you out as well. Now, it's one of those beat your own score deals. There's no, there's no scenario to beat, which is a little bit unfortunate. And also, as much as there's different like categories of scoring, so you can see how well did you do on specific scoring aspects and rank yourself on there, I don't particularly care about ranking systems. But total score goes from 0 to 100 plus. On my first game I played of this, all the rules correct, I got 101 points. So I got the maximum score that you could get in this game on my first game. It's not the most difficult solo mode to play, and so it's nice, it's charming, and you will get through the game in 45 minutes tops. I mean, it's a nice, light, zen-like game practically, I guess. But don't go into this thinking the solo mode is going to be very thinky or your reason for buying this game. It's not a seller on its own. I think the Tawanako one did it better.
Overall, I would rate it a C+. Okay? Not great.
This is just a nice light game. This is kind of what sit-down games do. Light, family weight, fairly straightforward. You know, Tawanako is probably definitely more meaty than this, I think, in terms of the thinking power. This one is more relaxing, more light, more fun. Well, no, sorry. Tawanako is more fun, but it's a fun, light, charming game. Just nothing to write home about. You know, I think that, they've done better games, but I think this one is nice enough, does the job. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 overall. It just gets into a seal of endorsement level. I think that if you're buying this just for solo mode, I don't think it'll be worth it. I think you can skip this and move along, but it's nice and light, and I don't know what the price tag for this is. I mean, if this comes out and it's relatively cheap, like we're talking around the £30 mark, then it's not a bad little game that you can grab, and you've got a little bit of like interaction with the other players, not direct, but enough going on that you get a little bit of banter and a little bit of light-hearted, back and forth, which is just enough to see you through, especially when the game is only about an hour long, 45 minutes with solo and 2 players. It's nice and short, very easy to teach, very quick to set up. I mean, you can be setting this game up in like less than 5 minutes with ease, and you can have yourself a decent time. 7 out of 10, seal of endorsement. Give it a try at Essen and see what you think. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when the video goes live. Don't forget to check out more reviews that I've done on this channel. We have, of course, the very heavy Voidfall that I've reviewed recently, and I don't know if this review will come out first or the other one, but you can also check out the review from Skulk, Hollow, and Mole Peak, the pair of 2 games about fighting guardians as little animal tribes, when that one comes out as well. Until next time, remember, regardless of whether your map sketches tie back to reality or not, it's still only a game. Bye for now, everyone.